We are the global shapers of the Budapest Hub, a network of young people driving dialogue, action, and change. Welcome to our Shaping Budapest podcast series, where we aim to tackle various global issues in a local context. In each podcast episode, together with our guest speakers, experts, and thought leaders, we will explore one of the following topics: climate and environmental change, sustainable business, fourth industrial revolution, and the need of a new social contract. We hope to get you engaged and inspired to think global and act local.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Shaping Budapest podcast by the Global Shapers Hub Budapest. I am Zsófi Dombi, and today we are going to talk about climate change with a focus on how to arrive from international policy to local solutions. Today, I'm here with two amazing ladies from V4SDG, an NGO that aims to bring sustainability to the Central Eastern European region. First, let me introduce Krisztina Zálnoky, a public policy graduate who recently finished her traineeship at the European Commission, as well as attended the first global UN Youth Climate Conference in New York. Our second guest is Federica Fate, a global business and sustainability graduate from Rotterdam University, who is currently the project catalyst of Real School Budapest, a new international primary school with a focus on entrepreneurial learning and sustainability. Thank you, Krisztina and Fede, for accepting the invitation.
Thank you for having
everyone.
So, just to give our audience a bit of background before diving into the topic, at the World Economic Forum's annual meeting in Davos in 2020, climate change moved to the forefront of the discussion. From CEOs and government ministers to politicians and celebrities, everyone talked about big solutions to fix our warming planet. But despite all the talk at Davos, many believe that the change is still not happening fast enough and say that the efforts that have been made are simply too small. So my first question would be to you: what do you think is the real role of such events in the battle of climate change?
Because they bring people together, in most cases important people, decision makers, politicians, investors, and they are able to discuss problems, shared ideas and best practices at these events, which then they can bring back to their own countries. So such high-level conferences have always played an important role in shaping global trends and influencing policymaking. But it's important to note that the battle against climate change doesn't stop at these conferences, such as Davos. I think that lessons learned have to be transformed into simple and clear messages, and also solutions that can be implemented at the local level. So this is why involving startups, SMEs, and the local community is very important in the process in order to adjust policies and solutions to local needs.
Thank you, Fede. What do you think, Kriszti?
Yes, I agree with Fede, what she just said. And what I would like to add here is that all these events like Davos, the Climate Action Summit, the COP conferences, they have a really important role in holding governments and business leaders accountable. So, for instance, what I experienced in the Climate Action Summit is that on the main day, basically all the governments, the leaders of the governments, they pledged climate action. They pledged millions of euros and also like different actions that they would like to take in order to fight climate actions. And later on, these pledges are basically the foundations based on which you can hold them accountable. So I think here really the key is accountability, and I think here also comes the role of organizations like V4SDG and other climate action movements, that we need to hold these players accountable.
Yeah, thank you. I believe that's completely true, and I agree with you. However, still, I think many people believe that these events are just about talking, and So my next question would be, like, do you agree with the statement that despite all the talking, results are still not coming?
I don't agree with this statement, even though I'm also I'm always thinking that more should be done and more could be done. But I see a lot of results. So I think people who are working in this field know about all the efforts that are being made to fight climate change. But it is also true that change is happening at a much slower pace than it should, which means that we are indeed late in acting against climate change and also other global challenges that are linked to it. And in my opinion, there are a lot of reasons for this. And one of the biggest problems is the lack of communication and cooperation between policymakers and local doers. As I also mentioned in the beginning, I think it's very important to bring all that talking and the lessons learned from those big events and from the important people, decision makers, to the local communities. It's very, very complex and difficult to change whole systems. And even if some governments succeed with certain new policies, it would definitely require a big sacrifice from individuals. And we all know that politicians tend to think in the short term. So if individuals who elect them feel that their lives have been influenced negatively due to, let's say, a climate change policy, they might not re-elect these politicians. So I think that we should also see the positive side of the story and make sure that we learn from the lessons of, for example, the COVID-19 pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and here I just would like to. So as I studied public policy, I look at these problems through like a public policy lens, if I can say so. And I think like when we are analyzing the results, it's also important to understand the problem itself. So why is it so difficult to unite for solving the climate and ecological crisis? So there is a public policy concept, the so-called tragedy of commons, that basically means that when there is a shared resource system, people tend to act in their own interest, so their own self-interest, and we don't really feel that this is our responsibility to handle a crisis at such extent. So I think really, if you want to see results, one of the first steps is really owning the climate crisis and sharing the responsibility in finding a solution to it. And then other thoughts I would like to share here is that many ask now we are talking in the context of the coronavirus and the current crisis, and many people ask that how is it possible that we can witness such global solidarity and cooperation for fighting the virus when we lack this drive in case of sustainability and climate action? And here I think one problem is what I just mentioned, the problem of the tragedy of the commons. So really sharing the responsibility is one of the issue. And I think another problem here is that the consequences of the climate crisis are rather long term. So of course we can also witness it nowadays, but it's not as how can I say it? It's maybe not as it doesn't seem as urgent as in the case of the coronavirus. So I think here what could really help is to break down this really complex crisis into smaller problems, like smaller issues, and so we can face them. And then I think the results will come.
Yeah, I see. I completely agree again. I think with COVID-19, people are affected now and they can feel the effect on their skin, basically, while with climate change, the thread is a bit far away, it seems like it. And also another thing is, I think this main belief that it's just like all the talking and nothing is happening also comes from Greta Thunberg, because she often seems to be really annoyed with politicians, and I don't know, what do you think about that? How she helps or with climate change, or in some cases, I don't know, maybe hinders things?
Well, I think that's sorry, Kristi, if you want to go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's just so I think the greater question is is a really interesting one, and when I gave an interview to Index earlier after after I attended the Climate Action Summit, I just highlighted that I think there are many other great climate activists, many other amazing movements that should be highlighted and should be on the news. And I think like the general public would also have a different response if it wouldn't be just one girl like Greta who is in the spotlight, and they could relate more to someone from their local community, from their own country. So this is something I always emphasize, that we need to have more role models in the climate action. However, I definitely agree what she says, that we need more action and not more talking, and this is also what the Secretary General of the UN said at this summit. So he said that leaders talk too much and listen too little. So I think this is also a key, that all the global leaders, they listen to these voices.
Yeah, I completely agree. I just wanted to add in the beginning that Greta's presence or the person of Greta is a really controversial topic. I see a lot of advantages, or the benefits of her becoming more popular and bringing this topic to a level that was, I think, unimaginable before.
Yeah.
And I also totally understand her point when she says that politicians, decision makers are only talking and not enough is happening. So I understand what she wants to achieve with that, but I agree with Kristi that it might be a bit counterproductive in the long term, because she also has quite a lot of enemies due to these statements that she made. So I know it's not easy to stay neutral, but in my opinion, if she rather tried to not saying support decision makers in what they do, whatever it whatever decisions they make regarding climate action, of course not, but I think a lot of decision makers are trying their best to address this crisis, and maybe she should have backed those more.
Yeah, and I would just add one thought here, is that really the I think the key is collaboration, and that's also one of the SDGs. So SDG 17 is partnership for the goals, and I think this is what we lack here in case of this this question around Greta. So really, if like if you were a politician and someone approached you with all these demands, with a system change, then you just have to think about how you would react if you were a politician, if you were a decision maker. So changing the whole system, changing a country's policy is not something that happens overnight. So I think this is just important to keep in mind, that really what I lack in case of her is really the drive for collaboration and also understanding.
I think this also brings the question, how can we bring change? Is it a top-down or a bottom-up approach?
I think this is also a very interesting question. We had a really great debate night on this topic with our NGO, V4SDG, here in Budapest. And the question we formulated was whether sustainability in general was an individual or institutional responsibility. But it's pretty much the same as asking whether a top-down or a bottom-up approach is more effective in the fight against sustainability or fight for sustainability or
Yeah.
against climate change. I think it's it's not such a black and white, there's no black and white answer, because there is no clear answer to this question. I think we need both top down and bottom up approaches, because politicians and CEOs are also everyday people who could be environmentalists and bring their enthusiasm to the workplace and influence whole multinationals or even whole countries. There are some great examples of that, such as the CEO of Patagonia, the apparel brand, and some also say the CEO of IKEA is really is considered an environmentalist. But something else worth mentioning is also that we can see a pattern in the past, that a lot of big waves of change have started because of revolutions and protests. And I'm not saying that everyone should go to the streets and organize climate marches and demand climate action right now, because that's also not very effective. But I think that governments tend to decide based on the opinion of the masses, and if they want to win the upcoming elections, they will try to
address this topic.
address the topics that the masses want to see addressed. So I think we as everyday people, not just we, everyone has a major role in starting this wave of change, and then it depends on governments how they react and what kind of policies they put in place.
I just would like to follow up on what Fede said, that like both the top-down and the bottom-up approach, they are both needed. So it's not like a one-way street, and it's also my experience. So again, I would refer back to the Climate Action Summit, because it was just such a unique experience to be there and meet all those amazing activists. So now I just would like to bring my example, how I think it's more like a circle, like the global, the European, the local level, and how they all interrelate. I think it's just really fascinating. So when I was at the Climate Action Summit, I met fellow young people from Central Eastern Europe. We were like the 4 or 5 of us, and during the Climate Action Summit, there was a possibility to organize small panel discussions. So we got together one morning and we brainstormed that, okay, so we come from Central Eastern Europe, let's do something together, like show that here in these parts of Europe we're also working on this issue. So we came up with the topic where we discussed what are the different challenges we face, and we also showcased some of the solutions through the example of our organizations and other initiatives we knew. So this was the start of like, let's say, nice friendships and collaborations. So right now, for instance, we are working together with our Slovak partners. So who I met in the Climate Action Summit, Petra, who is currently the UN Youth Delegate. Now she joined me for SDG, and now we are working together. And this is through the Climate Action Summit, so through the international level, and we brought it to the regional level. And another example is that the Polish delegate who I met at the Climate Action Summit was also a trainee at the European Commission by coincidence, and we just figured it out there. And the both of us, we joined the Sustainability Society there and worked together on a policy paper. So again, and of course we brought our like regional perspective to the European level. So it's just really, this small example of mine is just to show that we are all like really interconnected, and all the levels are really related. And And I think it's more like a circle, yeah.
Thank you for sharing this story. This was really, really nice. And also, I think this brings back to us that, like, with your organization V4SDG, you are dealing with both local people as well as politicians and members of the market, I guess. So, what is your experience regarding sustainability and climate change? Is it more like international commitment or local belief?
Again, it's referring back to what I said, that it's all interconnected, and I think that both are really important. So international commitments and also local belief, because one is driving the other. And I think here also comes the mission of V4SDG. So we mainly focus, as I said, on SDG 17, that stands for Partnership for the Goals. And we truly believe that connecting the different actors who work in sustainability in Central Eastern Europe will bring also local change, but also we can further foster the sustainability agenda on European and global level.
Well, in my opinion, it really depends on the individual, because certain people are motivated by local actions and local politicians and their own communities, because they feel more connected to that, and they are more effective in working for something when they can, how to say, they feel the connection with the problem, the local problem. But I also know a lot of people who are working for sustainability or to fight climate change because they feel compassion, empathy with the ones who are already affected by it in certain islands in the Pacific, or in places where there are serious droughts and floods already because of climate change. So I think one of the great things about our organization is that we try to do both. We try to connect with local people and also with international decision makers and learn from both of them, and we try to link not only them but also different sectors, from NGO, academia, and the business sector, etc. And we also try to build a bridge between generations. So we have several projects where we try to involve young professionals and also senior experts, so that they can help each other, because I think we have a lot to learn from those who have been working in this field for decades, and they also have a lot to learn from us young people who have this fresh mindset and motivation to work on their own future.
I think we all have sort of this, I don't know, belief that climate change only concerns the youth. I'm really glad to hear that there are also more senior people who are interested in this.
Well, yes, I'm pretty sure there are a lot, and I think there are not many organizations who work on building this bridge between the two generations.
Yeah.
And in most cases, I have really positive experience when talking with those who have been working in this field for decades, because they really know a lot and they know a lot of people. They identify problems much more quickly, and they usually are grateful for the feedback of young people on certain topics.
Here I just would like to add one thing about I'm really happy that we talk about like youth engagement. And I think here the key is like meaningful youth engagement, because yes, there are many great initiatives. There are town halls. You can meet representatives of leading institutions. It seems like they are listening to your voices, but it's not always the case. So when I mentioned earlier that we had we had a meeting in the European Commission, like the Sustainability Committee, with high-level decision makers, and that was one of our points, that it's really nice that you invite us for a meeting, but what we say here, please take it into account when you are making the decisions. So I think, and it was also my perception of the Climate Action Summit and the Youth Climate Summit, that we were there, we made connections among us, like activists and young leaders. However, I think what we would need more is really like meaningful engagement in policy making, because this is what, as of yet, I don't really see in this area. There are some initiatives, but and we, as we for SDG, we are also working on this to really have more opportunities for youth to have meaningful engagement with leaders.
And Fede, you are working also at Real School. How do you see the youngest generation? How do they know about climate change? How do they feel about it?
Mm-hmm. Well, I might be a bit biased because our
Yeah.
whole school is about sustainability and project-based learning and learning about sustainability through projects. But I can say that they are really open and interested. We work with kids ages 6 to 12, and it's really nice to see how they have developed in the past, well, now almost a year. We had amazing projects, for example, building a small urban garden in our garden and building a compost bin in the garden, which we use daily, of course, before the coronavirus situation happened. And they have also experimented with small solar panels, and they did math, for example. They learn math and calculations through that project. I could go
Wow.
on with the list for hours, but the main point is that I think it's a wonderful opportunity to teach kids from a very young age about this, and I think it has a really strong spillover effect to their families, because we are for now we are a small community, but even at a bigger school, if a kid learns about something related to climate change, they will most definitely go home and talk about it if it's an interesting project, and the parents would learn about it too, or the siblings. And I can see that clearly in our small community, but I think it works at a bigger level as well. But another important aspect here is to consider that they are still children, and they should not be bombarded with facts, scary facts that could be very counterproductive in the medium and long term for them. So I think if we scare them at the age of 10, let's say, about this really difficult situation that they will have to face in the future, for sure, it can lead to them being climate anxious, which is already diagnosed as it's already a thing. And they could also decide not to pursue any activities in this field because they feel totally hopeless. And I think it's especially important in the case of teenagers. So we try to be careful when talking about sustainability, trying to give them solutions rather than scaring them about with facts.
Yeah, I'm really glad you mentioned this climate anxiousness, because my field is in mental health, and I was recently in a congress where this was a whole topic, that there are many teenagers who feel hopeless, who have depression and anxiety because of climate change. So I think it is really important to talk about it in a right way and address it, so that they can feel that they are empowered to do something and not anxious.
It's difficult to find that fine line, but I'm sure it's possible because in my experience, I also had a period where I felt that I'm not saying that this is nonsense and why am I doing this, but I was feeling anxious and I didn't really understand why, what the purpose of this was if nobody else cared. But that's a bit of a fatalistic view of the things. So yeah, that this is why it's really important to talk with kids and teenagers about this in a positive, empowering way.
Mm. Yeah, and I think real school is an amazing example. And I would like to ask you about what do you think, or what do you see what's going on in Budapest in terms of climate change? If you can name a few examples of initiatives, and in general, I would be interested in your opinion.
So there are many great initiatives, and actually Fede is more more familiar with them because I just recently moved home from Brussels. So this is why I bring all the more international and European examples. So one great initiative is Másfélfok. We are collaborating with them. So they are also one of our partners, and basically Másfélfok is a new think tank, and what they do is that they help to translate complicated information about climate change into everyday language. So for instance, when I was at the Climate Action Summit, I was in touch with them, and I sent them pictures throughout the day with comments that what's going on, and really translating all that high level discussion to an Instagram post, to an Instagram story. So I think the initiative is really great. And another example is a startup that I think it's worth mentioning. That's called compositing.
It's an indoor composting.
Indoor. This is the word I was looking for, indoor composting solutions. So, and I believe that there are many more like this, but these are two to highlight.
Just to add on that, I think these are really great examples. We could go on for hours, but I think it's worth mentioning Climate Kick, which is the EU's climate innovation initiative, and they also have a hub here in Budapest. They have a lot of programs for startups. So it's more like an umbrella organization helping new climate change ideas, startups to develop and to grow. Mm-hmm. So this is not an initiative from Budapest, but I think the work of this hub here is worth mentioning because it's working really well.
Yes, and also maybe a last example is it's rather well known, the Fridays for Future Hungary movement. So we are also in touch with them, and I think it's also amazing that they started this movement in Budapest in the first place. And as far as I know, they are also having teams already across the countryside too. So I think this really shows that there are many different actors when it comes to sustainability in Budapest. So we mentioned the think tank, a startup, Climate Kick, that's more like an incubator, and also the youth movement is also present.
And I think also we can see some changes in transport system, which is quite interesting. More bicycle routes around Budapest. Do you bicycle, or what do you think about these changes?
I'm really happy about them, even though the bigger changes have happened on the Pest side, and I'm not really. So I don't live and work there. I usually don't go there, but I know from friends who live there that they are very happy about it. These changes have mostly happened because of the pandemic, and I don't know how long they will last. I really hope they will. But I see a positive trend in general in the city. I don't bike often, but let's say a few times per week, and it's much better to bike on a bicycle route. I also lived in the Netherlands, and I I loved the infrastructure there. It's a bit more difficult to create it here because of the hills on the Buddha side, but I think it's not impossible. And I really think that the local government should put an emphasis on motivating people to use their bikes more.
I am not really a bicycle person, to be honest, because I commute from a smaller town outside of Budapest. However, what I really would like to see is more green spaces in Budapest. I think, Zsófi, you can relate that we lived in London, and even London is one of the biggest cities, but there are just so many green spaces, even if it's just a small community garden, and this is what I miss from Budapest. So I really hope that they will improve the green spaces.
So in general, you think that Budapest is in a good place when we look at other, let's say, capital cities?
I think it's difficult to say because we have a lot of great things in this city, but I know that, for example, air pollution, which is usually not talked about, is a big problem in the city. And now with the COVID-19 pandemic, we saw a decline in the number of movements and the use of cars. But then the government decided to cancel the parking fees, or to stop, like, people don't have to pay for parking anywhere in the city, and also on the Buda side, and this increased the number of cars tremendously. And I of course understand that because of safety and health reasons, it's much better if people go to places with their cars to work and etc. But I know that, for example, the mayor of Budapest, who is a famous biker, I mean, he's known for using his bike quite often. He was really against this measure of abolishing parking fees.
It's really interesting that the virus brought a lot of changes into our lives. What do you think? Will it help in terms of climate change, or hinder it, or it's two different stories and there are no relationships?
I think it's a very, very interesting question, and I think there are definitely like linkages between the two, as I previously also mentioned, like comparing how we globally handle the COVID-19 crisis and the climate and ecological crisis. It's really interesting to see the differences. I think just following up on the discussion of like car usage and changes in Budapest, I just read an article that it's projected that car usage will increase after the crisis, when we can move again and the restrictions will be lifted. As we mentioned, the reasons, so like for health reasons, that's not using public transportation. So I think there will. So now, as for now, of course, the emissions reduced, but I am concerned of the long-term consequences of the crisis on emissions. And also I think a very interesting topic is the economic recovery after the crisis, and again bringing the European example. So the European Green Deal is a really, really ambitious agenda, and I'm just really curious to see how we can keep the targets we set in the European Green Deal and handling the crisis. So really really working on a recovery plan that works for the people and the planet. A good sign is that actually the head of the member states of the European Union, they they signed a communication where they said that they would like to have an economic recovery after the crisis that's led by the sustainability agenda and digitalization. So there is hope that the two can work together.
Just to add on that and to promote our organization a bit, we are organizing a talk series that will be published soon, and it will be all about the relationship between COVID-19 and sustainability, and the special focus will be on environmental sustainability and climate change, and how the pandemic positively or negatively affects the current situation. And in my opinion, we see a lot of good things happening. People, of course, are not moving that much, and this causes less emissions, less pollution, less waste, and also planes are flying much less. But the example that I mentioned before with the parking, it also happened in other cities, and that's, for example, on the other side of the story. It's not that positive, unfortunately. And the key is to see how we will go back to reality once this is over. Because if we restart where we stopped, then I think we didn't learn anything. And I really hope that people, from individuals to decision makers, will realize that one of the reasons of this pandemic, of this outbreak, was that we are living out of the boundaries of our planet. And I hope it's a wake-up call for everyone to reimagine our everyday lives.
One of my last questions would be, what can an average Budapester do stop climate change in a small way?
And actually, I have one advice, and I think it's really like, take action and start your own project. So of course you can join many initiatives, but sometimes it's just you have to step up and start a project. So it can be a really, really small thing to just bringing my example. So I used to work in a multinational company, and the company had a sustainability agenda. However, like my colleagues, they weren't that familiar with the SDGs and how it all comes down to their individual action. So with my fellow colleague, who is now also part of the first SDG and an active member, we organized a small workshop for our colleagues. So it was really not a big thing, a 2 hours workshop on understanding how the global goals translate to your own to your life, to your everyday life, also in the office, but in your private life at home. So I just really would encourage everyone to think about this, like these small solutions, a workshop, a talk, or you can just approach your local government and ask what you can do. So I think the most important is take action.
I really agree with that. I would just add that being and staying informed, reading about the topic, and attending events are maybe step 0 before starting your own projects, for people who are not that much familiar with the topic of sustainability or climate action. And I would also suggest to get involved in organizations if you, for example, don't feel the drive, or you don't feel prepared yet to start your own startup in sustainability. So just get active and take action wherever you can, from your home until your workplace, and in the end, if you can, create a project.
One last thought that I have here is, and I think it's important when you really start not just working with sustainability, but you start to gain interest in sustainability. It's like, if you look up the Sustainable Development Goals, it's 17 goals, very, very different areas, from gender equality to economic development. So I just think it's also important to find your passions. So sustainability is a really broad area, and if you find that specific problem, cause that you're passionate about, then I think it would also drive your action.
Thank you very much for this really interesting discussion. I'm just wrapping up because we are sort of out of time, but I think we would be able to continue this forever. And I wish you the best of luck with the V4SDG. I know that you have big plans for the organization, right?
Yes, absolutely. So maybe as in the summary part, I can just quickly tell about our project. One project we are working on is what Fede mentioned earlier, is the online talk series on the COVID-19 and sustainability. So we are going to analyze this topic from different angles, namely from an environmental, social, and economic perspective. The first talk will be on the 21st May. We will post more information very soon, and this relates to one of our main projects, which is the sustainability, the Budapest Sustainability Exchange, that will bring together those who are working on sustainability in the Visegrad group. Another project we are working on is the launch of the V4SDG Connect, which is a platform for individuals and organizations in the V4, where they can share events, projects, and find each other, find project partners. And maybe Fede, you can tell a bit more about the two other projects.
Yes, we have. Now that we are talking about it, I realize we have a lot of projects going on at the same time, which is great. So we also have this so-called V4SDG Lab project. It relates to our goals to connect generations, because we aim to bring together 100 young professionals from our region, the Visegrad 4, and maybe also some of the neighboring countries, to work together on projects to advise companies or governments in the long term, and become sort of a think tank / consultancy. And we will involve senior experts in the board of this in the board of this project to listen to their ideas and opinions and to receive feedback from them. But we're also working on the so-called cooperation minimum, sustainability cooperation minimum, with political representatives, young political representatives from the 4 countries. And we're drafting a document with them, which we will hand in to the 4 respective governments as a source of inspiration, let's say, but with the hope that they will put some of our suggestions into action as soon as possible.
Amazing. These sounds really great. So I wish you best of luck with that. And again, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. It was great.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity. But I feel like we could just continue for hours.